Hey guys, so if any of you have been watching me for any period of time now, you know that I have alluded a couple of times to my Fallen City build, which is now nearing completion, I am glad to say. It's been a big, complex build, but what I want to go through with you today is the base blocks. This is one part of the base that I'm working on. So this is a set of modular city blocks that I am going to take you through now in this episode. So the idea is to have a series of blocks that can create a whole range of environments, whether that is a fallen city, a dungeon layout, any kind of architectural setup. These individual blocks are literally the building stones on which to put all of the scattered terrain that converts it into whatever you need, be that dungeon, city, or any other imagined architectural concept. So I've created a number of these squares. I've created the big 20 inch by 20 inch one, and I've also created these triangular ones, corner pieces, as well as a couple of rectangles. And you'll see a variety of layouts at the end of this episode if you scoot through. Don't skip to the end, watch it through, like and subscribe if you can. This channel is moving ever forwards to being a successful part of my creative studio, and that's thanks to you guys who stick around, watch it through, subscribe. Of course, also thanks to my patrons. If you are interested in Patreon and helping me as a content creator and artist, then please head on over there. For £1 or £2 a month, you can really support me. But if not, just watch it through, ask any questions down in the comments, and enjoy the process. The rest of the terrain for this fallen city is it's nearly finished. Let's say that. The next episode should be the scattered terrain, so you can see what I'm going to put on top of this. And this is going to be a long-term project as well. I have a lot of plans, like with my lava terrain, as to what I want to do, the things I want to build to make it ideal for all sorts of games. Frostgrave, Mordheim, D&D, Age of Sigmar. Too many to really count. Yeah, so one of the focuses for this build, it's a longer video, and it's because I want to talk to you about painting in colour, not in black and white, not in grey, working with colour, and how you should really think about your colours if you mix your own colours and don't use them straight out of a tub. So that's a fair chunk of information inside this episode. If you are inclined to think about your colour theory a little deeper. Anyway, guys, I have talked enough, so I will sign off this intro now and say, let's do this. So here we are. The base kind of block that I've made out of EVA foam. You can catch how I do that in my lava terrain video, but basically all I create is just a box with an open bottom. It's the bottom facing up at the moment. So yeah, a top and 4 sides, and I do all of these at a set height, which is it's about 60 millimeters in height, so that all of my terrain base blocks that I craft are all workable with each other. So if I want this fallen city to be next to some rolling hills or next to the lava terrain, then that kind of gives me all of that modularity. I can mix and match my terrain pieces. Certainly those that I've made in the latter months of the channel so far, and what I will go on to make. So I made 2 types of cuts, the base bricks and also the base flagstones, which you will see shortly. And I'm just going around. These were all cut by eye. There's no measurements. I didn't mark out how big these bricks were going to be. I just sat down and started cutting. I wanted the kind of quirky variety of different sized bricks. So all I'm doing is laying down a fairly generous amount of PVA along the line, and then just adding the next line of bricks. This project was relatively simple. The base blocks were relatively simple, but they were obviously very time consuming, and that's kind of the big commitment here. But I was really wanted to have a crack at doing individual brick construction, as opposed to etching a brickwork pattern into the EVA foam using the burner tool, like you can see, for example, in my Dungeon of the Dead 3 video. So here we go. I'm going to flip the block over now, and you can see how the flagstones look. Again, these outer edge flagstones, there was no measurements done. I just cut basically what I thought was about an inch in square. Now, what I did, once I'd laid down the outer perimeter of flagstones, I took a knife and then I cut one of those flagstones into quarters, so I'd end up with these smaller inner flagstones to cover the rest of the area with, and that just added a little bit of a difference in the detailing. And some of these outer flagstones were also a little on the chunky side, so I would just take a knife and slice them through their sort of width, so that they were a bit thinner for these inner flagstones as well. And no real structure to this. I wanted that kind of disarray of stones. So some overlap, certainly, between the stones themselves, but there were going to be so many of these across the blocks that I made, I wasn't going to start getting caught up into any specific patterns for this. So just lay them down, pick up a handful, put down a layer of glue, and just start sticking flagstones down. And as I say, this was quite time consuming, and in part hence the reason for such a delay on getting this video out to you guys. But hopefully you'll find it well worth it. Now, those of you that have been around with me for a while will know that EVA is very flexible. It will bend and fold a lot, and if you just stick that down to your terrain, it's going to retain that flexible nature. If you want that, that's perfectly fine, and there's many opportunities where you need that, and it's great for it. However, for myself, in most of the terrain builds, I want it to be rigid and a good solid base on which to work. So the first steps to take with EVA foam to seal it is a hot air gun, which will close up the porous nature of the EVA so it doesn't soak up the paint too quickly. And it also starts firming up the EVA, although it will get quite floppy first. Once it cools, it's a little firmer than it was previously. And then the second step is a good sealant, and there are a variety of sealants that you can use. I like PVA. I have no objections to the drying time. There are clear coat seals out there that you can also use, spray on seals and that kind of thing, but I like the PVA because I think it adds a level of texture as well. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just sealing the whole of the block. And you'll notice this is a different block to the one I was just working on. There's a variety of these are made, and you're going to see me working on different ones through the process of this video. With the whole thing PVA'd up, I can then start adding some textures, and one of my favourite go-tos is this vermiculite, which is a very finely ground bark. I think it might even be a cork bark or something like that, but it's a really ideal texture. It's an ideal scale for grit and that kind of loose shale. And then once I've coated that or sprinkled that on, I just take the brush with a little PVA on it, and I just sort of mash that into the surface there to just make sure that it's well bonded, and it just that mashing of the brush adds another level of detail as well. Okay, so some of you are probably saying, why am I mixing the blues with the brown? But just let me explain why brown is a good toning colour for this vibrant blue that I'm mixing. And for that, you need to know one of these. Now, although I'm showing you a colour wheel, I don't really want to get into too much deep colour theory. I don't think it's really that relevant. But one thing to understand is complementary colours. So that is basically any colour that's opposite another colour is a complementary colour. And if you mix a small amount of a complementary colour into the pure colour on the other side of the wheel, you will start to get a grey, an artist's grey. But that grey still has what we call a chroma. It still has a saturation of colour, which if I was to try and darken this vibrant blue with black, I would lose that chroma because black kills chroma. I hope this isn't too. I hope you're following me on this. Now, on the colour wheel, if we look at a nice bright blue down here somewhere, look at yellow at the top. Next to that, we've got this orange colour, a yellow orange. So that orange is the complement of blue, effectively. But I'm not using orange, am I? I'm using brown. So okay, where does the brown actually come from? So a lot of people think that the colour wheel is only those colours around the outer edge, but in actual fact the colour wheel works internally, inwards as well. And so browns are technically a red. They sit up in that sort of corner of that colour wheel, just underneath the purer colours. So if I was to use an orange, I would end up with certainly an artist's grey, but because of the higher yellow content, it would move more towards the greens, which I probably am going to be using at some point. But the brown is a really good toning colour for the blue to just grey it down enough, just take off that edge of vibrancy. If you don't own a colour wheel, just jump on Google, you'll find it easy enough. But anyway, that just gives you a little bit of an insight into certain colour choices and why I'm using them. So, but it's got a ways to go yet, but it's looking real good. Hopefully you can see that. Looking real good. And that's just that first colour addition. Okay, let's crack on. With that colour theory out of the way, I can move on. So all I want to do now is create a sort of a stronger purple colour. So I'm actually mixing blue and red together now to get that that basic colour. I'm going to pop this into a little pot and add a good dose of water and a little dish soap or flow improver, as I'm adding here. And this is going to be the wash, the first wash that I do over the whole of the set of blocks to harmonise some of the colours together now. And keep in mind, this isn't the black wash that you would see in a lot of terrain videos. This is just one of the many layers of paint that I am going to be applying. So once I've got that on there, I want to just take my tissue and dab a good excess amount back off. So this is going to leave it as a mottled mark across the stonework, which is adding implied textures, as well as adding variation in the colour tones that we've got going on. And that mauve colour that I mixed earlier on, I lightened that up further still, and then I just brushed quite a dry mix, brushed downwards into the wet glazes that I've just been putting on with that colour, just to start adding some downward streaking. Some of my later paint choices actually took a lot of this out, but an echo of it still survived through the subsequent paint layers. So, you know, your choice if you want to do this one. And then my final step before applying glazes is to take that light blue and lighten it further still and do a pretty heavy dry brushing across all of the brickwork. Again, it's got a very blue coloration to it. It's not a light grey, it's not a white. I still want that colour at this point in time. And this will be knocked back in the next colour layers that I'm going to do. However, if I was going to be using these tiles exclusively for Frostgrave, which is one of the reasons for doing this set in the first place, I might have stopped at this point. But I want to be able to use these tiles modularly for my dungeons and for other environments as well. So that's why I didn't stop at this very cold looking step. So, I am no stranger to oil paints. I teach oils in my art lessons. I've painted 100 plus oil paintings, but I've never actually used oils on my terrain or my minis. That's another story. So I plan to finish these off, or do the next step on these, with some oil washes to try out for the first time on my terrain. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. Okay, I've got some of my little, my older oil paints here. So I've got burnt umber, Prussian blue. This is a chromium oxide, which is like a dull green colour, and black. So the blue is because I want to pull back some of the blues. The green is because I want to add some sort of vegetation and mosses and lichens, and the burnt umber is just kind of going to naturalise some of this as well. And the black is obviously just to add a shadow depth to the colours. So I've got a squidge of each colour in my little pots here, and you do not need artist's turpentine or artist's thinners. You just need straight up white spirit from the DIY store for this. I wouldn't paint with my oils into a painting with this, but for terrain. Yeah, okay, so that should be enough to get going with anyway. And I have one just clear white spirit here, which is just for cleaning the brush, pretty much. So good old rough stiff bristle brush, and then just generally be sure to swish your brush around a lot more than what you think you've got to. You'd be surprised. So in general, what I'm going to do is take a little of the purer colours, and then I'll tone those with the neutralising colours, the browns and the blacks. So just pushing this colour around, you can see it flows nice and readily. But if I do need it to flow a little more, just take a little white spirit, just push that all over. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little of that brown and just now let that flood in, and that will really change the that blue to a more naturalised blue. The green is because I want to bring in some vegetation, so I'm just going to drop this green around here and there. I'm just going to let that spread out and do its thing. And I got to say, initial impression is looks very nice. Because oils will take a long time to dry as well, or a lot longer than the acrylics, they'll go through a lot of changes as they dry out. I do actually have dryers for my oils that I use. I could add those. A cobalt dryer, which you can't really get in the UK, but you can get it in the States. I got mine from the States when I was there. Yeah, I like it. So as a first use of oils on my actual terrain, as opposed to just in my paintings, a nice job that does. Of the tops, it certainly does. And they're obviously going to go a long way as well. Wow, super pleased with that. This green is going in real nice as well. I thought it might be a little too strong, but no, it's real going in nice. Softening out into the other colours very well. Now I guess one of the things is, as I tip this to do the sides, there's going to be a certain amount of run, and that's absolutely fine as well, because I actually wanted some runs. Okay, so let's get this side done. So as you can see, so take some of the blues. And I am going to let this sort of run down. Now actually maybe I'll coat with the blue fairly full on. And then let the browns and the greens run down. Really does a nice job. I can see why this is so popular of late. Yeah, look at that. Fantastic. Well, I really was super pleased with how that finished out. It sort of lightened a little in the drying, which is fine. So now I'm just going over and doing the black wash that we're all used to doing. And that'll just settle nicely down into the shadows and just give a little bit deeper finish to what I had there a moment ago. So yeah, pretty straightforward stuff, that bit. And with all that dry, it is time to get into doing some detailing. So I've got around the pieces of terrain, I've got these deeper recesses between the smaller paving blocks or flagstones, and I want those to have either look like they're very deep or that they've got pools of water in them. So I'm just getting a brush, I'm getting some straight black, and I'm just working into those recesses as and where I see them. all over the top surfaces of the base blocks themselves. Now I plan to go for some fairly simple pools of water and moisture trapped between the flagstones, with some mosses and a little bit of vegetation around the edges of the stones. So the simplest water effect you can use is PVA. I do like my PVA. I have actually got some other stuff, but I was going to use here, but I ended up not doing that. I could have used the 2-part clear epoxy as well, if I'd have had some, but PVA is what I'd got to hand, so that was the easiest. So I'm laying down in some of the deepest recesses and some of the wider ones as well, the ones that are a bit more open rather than just between the cracks of paving stones. The glue will settle down into the that recess. It'll drop down as it starts to set, so it won't stay like a bulbous shape above the level of the flagstones themselves. It'll drop a little, but the little bit of remnant glue that's on the edges of the flagstones, of course, will be where the majority of the bonding of the lichens and mosses are going to be put. So once I've finished laying down the glue where I want it, I'm just using my finger just to spread out some of the glue onto the top of the flagstones, ready to put those lichens on. And that's going to be it's the last remnants of my homemade sawdust that I've stained a long time ago. It's not quite the right colour. That's alright. I'm going to paint it in a bit anyway. I'm going to restain it in situ. So I'm just grabbing some of the flock and sprinkling that on to the area. I'm not too worried about where it goes, but I am trying to just run in line with the edges of the flagstones wherever that leads me. So the texture of the flock there is just a little on the coarse side. So all I want to do is basically kind of make a bit of a paste from it. I think I saw Iron Griffin Studios. I think he makes kind of a paste for his mosses and lichens using flock and a bit of watered down PVA. So I'm just basically doing the same thing. I'm just doing it in situ so that I can guide where the actual flock is going. So yeah, that is just a syringe with a little watered down PVA in it, so I can just deliver it kind of accurately, and then just use the brush to mix it and get the flock going roughly where I want it to go. And it just sort of softens off that initial coarse texture just that the dry flock has. I'm pretty sure many of you watched Bard's Craft before he departed the land of YouTube. But yeah, I always liked his approach to the grasses that you see in terrain with his hemp rope, and just cutting off a little section of the hemp there, and then using that as a tall grass in in any terrain. Here I just want it as not a reed, but just as a different type of vegetation growing out of these sort of little pools of water trapped between the flagstones. And then these things, I'm not entirely sure what they are, but they were just a kind of a little thing that was mixed in with the big bag of sphagnum moss that I bought from our local suppliers. Point on that, by the way, if ever you're after sphagnum moss, try to look for florists' suppliers, because you can buy a huge bag for a small amount by comparison to what you'll pay for it out of a hobby shop. Anyway, just to say, these are a little bit brittle, so they could potentially snap off, but that's not really a big issue. So I need to colour these, but they need to be dry, or the glue needs to be dry by the time I come to colour them. And again, I am using oil paint here just simply because it seemed to have a really good sort of travel through texture. So I felt that the oil paint would actually work out quite well to get not only the now dried flock, but also those grasses as well. And you can see here I'm just then trailing the brush along the basic geometry of the flagstones as an even finer grade moss that's just colouring the flagstones there. That green does look a little bit on the vibrant side, but it will sort of fade back. Oils will tend to dry a little darker than when you first put them on. So it will settle back into the overall piece. And just one last final point, as this has been a heavy kind of colour theory, colour mixing episode, and that is with your green, if you mix a tiny little bit of orange into your green, you'll see a little bit of the wet orange on the edge of the brush there, it will actually give it quite a natural grassy colour feel. So yeah, there's a little tip for your grassy greens. Just add a touch of orange, it will naturalise them just a little. Or it will naturalise the greens just a little.